For the recording record, Janelle called the meeting to order at 6:04 p.m. Okay, sorry. Yep.
Okay.
So board members, you have one application in your packet. If you'll recall at your last meeting in November, you approved a process and timeline for soliciting applicants for the budget committee. We had one applicant and she is here tonight. So in your packet, you also have a list of questions that have been asked in the past during budget committee interviews. You're welcome to use those or not. You also have a note sheet that if you choose to take notes on the applicant, we would love for you to give those to us at the end of the meeting for the record. And with that, I will turn it over to Madam Chair.
Do you want to start with just like a little summary of like inspired you to apply for the committee position?
I was on the website looking at some information because I had questions about certain contracts. So to go back to how you kind of position open. Courtney was very helpful. Just put it in this number. I would like to be more involved in that. I've been wanting to be more involved. I was glad to see Stephen Fox in that vacancy, but I figured this was a good start.
It looks like you have a lot of experience with the Children's Learning Center and reviewed a lot of financials there. And was there a separate budget committee there as well, or you guys did everything?
The board of directors,
and who makes the budget there? Is there an executive director there as well as the budget, and you guys? What were some challenges that you faced with that budget and that goal?
I think probably this is not any organization from what cases. Might not, I just mean, you know, given the rate of inflation, we would like to give our employees, especially some of our lower paid employees, more of a raise, but we're dependent on the state's biennial budget. So putting in raises, you know, it's not, there's no fluctuation in this budget. Like, this is what you get so many dollars per student there, and you have to move that high. I'm trying to balance the needs of the organization versus recruitment. Logistically, are there any dates, times that all that? Wednesday mornings are difficult for me because I am required to attend board meetings for the county.
How's the budget schedule for online for people to find?
The calendar is online, but it's not.
Yeah,
Someone wouldn't necessarily have seen it. That would have been a good idea.
Yeah, I just thought of it there. I did not.
That would have been a good idea.
There's like,
Is it like Wednesday?
no, but
Everything's on Mondays.
yeah, and usually.
Yeah, well, I stole it from a few people.
Yeah. How many?
Yes.
But so we have that all lined up. It's like at that time of year. Sure.
I'm sure.
Yeah. By June 30. Yeah.
Disclosure with Gene and I weren't together.
Yeah. Oh, Jalissa, did you have any questions at all?
I think she's having a hard time hearing.
Oh, remember that one last year? Yeah. Any questions for us?
No, I do, but there you were way too much.
So, and Melissa Irving has, served as our communication for years. Her and Brandy have both been on there for quite a while on the budget. And then this is. Yeah, and then Teresa Martin. We're also from Children's Learning. So you're really quite, you work with Jamie, and you've also worked with two people that are young. And then Steve.
And then we're looking.
Yeah, the process has just gone a lot. It's been a lot. 2.5, 3 years, so it's been really nice. A lot more streamlined. Compared to the past. So, and we're finally at a year, you're coming into a year where we're gonna have to for like 2 years in a row, which has never happened. Because the QuickBooks doesn't use very well and different things, but, yeah, so it's, I think the time. All right. Well, I guess if no one has any other questions. And we're good. And if you want to stay and listen to our work session and meeting, you can, or
I might stay in this for the work session.
yeah. All right. So we'll move on to standing update, and the first one is the ongoing policy update. We're gonna go over that even though we don't have.
Well, we have to go over one thing.
Yeah. But we have patron rules and regulations, volunteers, just a paid leave of work.
Yeah, so on all the policies that we reviewed at our last work session, our attorney's office is basically out of commission with illness, just like many places. So they didn't get a chance to make the updates and do the final review on those policies. So the bylaws, the patron rules and regulations, and the volunteer policy are all going to come back to you in January on your work session, and then also on your business meeting with the option of considering approval. With paid leave Oregon, we have to make a decision tonight on the contribution and how you want to approach that. But the policy itself won't come back to you until January. And the reason that we have to make that contribution decision tonight is because contributions begin January 1st. So in your board packet, there's a cover memo talking about this paid leave Oregon contribution discussion. And we had our Central Oregon Parks and Recreation Directors meeting last week. And I asked everyone, I was like, so what are you guys all doing? And Don Horton with Bend was the only one that said that his board had discussed it at this point. And I got a couple of text messages later, like, oh crap, can you send me what you brought to your board, because I think it's a really great example of this law was passed in the middle of COVID. I think people kind of lost sight of it, and they've pushed back implementing it, I think once or twice, and they're still in the middle of writing the rules for it. So nobody really knows, and they keep changing. So every week we get this new update on what it actually is. So the thing that we do know is that there is this contribution requirement of all employers with 25 or more employees, and it's 1% of gross wages. And then the law requires that at least 60% contribution, or no more than 60% contribution, comes from the employee and 40% from the employer. And so the question for the board is, do you want to do 100% contribution? Do you want to do the 60-40 split? Do you want to do something different? Do you want this to be something that we review annually as part of the compensation package, part of the benefits package, or do you want to do something different? So you have a number of options that you can look at as it relates to this policy. Ben Park and Rec is covering 100% contribution for their employees. Their director said that they did that because they finally just got wages to a place where they wanted them to be, and they were worried that they were going to lose staff if they didn't do the full contribution. Other than that, no one else has had a discussion about this. In your cover memo, I gave you all the background and history on this particular law, the contributions, the notice that's required. Employee leave is the part where we don't really know yet. They're still writing those rules, but employees will be eligible to apply for leave through this program in September of 2023. As I've talked with folks, there's a feeling that there's going to be more interest in this program than funding at the 1% contribution level. And so there is a sense that it's every year when the OED does their review, they're going to end up going beyond that 1%. There's just this sense out there that, I don't know, maybe a fair statement, but that's going to happen. So the information I have for you is based on what we know today. So we know today that we have 38 out of 40 employees that meet the eligibility criteria of making at least $1,000 in wages during the period of time ahead of the start of collection of the contributions. As a business, the impact to us from January 1 to June 30 is about $3,000 for the total 1% of gross wages, if that makes sense. So when you look at the 60% of the 1%, that's the employee deduction, it's about $1,800 over the next 6 months. And for us, it's about $1,200 as the employer at that 40% contribution. Then when you look at how it relates to individual employee impacts, you can see that as employees make more money, it has more impact. So, you know, when you look at, for example, our entry-level position program aide, I took one of them. They generally work about 5 hours a week, 10 hours a week. And so their $3 as 1% of their gross wages does not seem like that big of a deal. You know, it would impact them $1.87 at 60%. As you go up that wage scale, you know, when you start looking at manager, director, it's a little bit more per month. But, you know, I look at mine and I'm like, well, that's my coffee budget for the month. So, right. So it's up to the board how you want to approach this. I did have one board member provide feedback via email, board member McCloskey, and so that's in your packet. And I highlighted this section on PFMLA, which is to follow the state mandated guidelines. And so really, it's on your business meeting for a decision. I just wanted to put it on the work session so you guys have a discussion if you want to do that, or you can wait until the business meeting. But hopefully the information presented as it relates to us as a business versus on individual employees is helpful. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about it.
Really, I think if you have a line curve that's going to put over $4.70, which is probably something that's think we all sit back and say, ooh, I wish the state raises income tax, in this case, sensitive tax.
I've been struggling with this one because I'm very much, part of me is very much where Gina is, that, you know, that this isn't something that we just is mandating. But then we struggled quite a bit to get cost of living increases, to get merit increases, to be able to find that. And bump our staff, prospective staff, up to a level that we felt, you know, comfortable offering. So I'm struggling $409 coming out of everybody's paycheck. I'm struggling with that. Because that does, I don't remember exactly where we ended up with the cost of living increase, but was it 3%?
Oh, cost of living was 7.1.
Okay,
Yep. And then everybody had access to up to 2% merit if earned.
okay. So this would take out half their merit.
60% of 1%, take out 60% of 1%. Yep.
I personally like the idea of, the board us covering this and reviewing every year as we do the budget. I believe that was. I'm thinking about it coming out.
She was talking about their health insurance. Pulling some back.
Yeah, over cover this compensation.
Yeah, so one idea was right now the policy, the board policy for employees is that employees have access to up to $750 per month for health insurance. And that $750 can be used toward their health insurance as well as their families up to $750.
But there are a lot of people aren't taking that.
We have 2 that are covered by insurance. And then for vacant positions, we budget for the full 750, just not knowing. So the question was, do you want to reduce from 750 to something less? My recommendation would be that we have that conversation during the budget. As it relates to this budget, we have $3,000 already kind of built into the associated payroll costs in our budget because I conservatively budget expenses. So we can absorb it within our current budget. What I would recommend, I have 2 different ideas in my mind. Because I like to, you know, for me, I kind of try and find that middle ground, and maybe it's, you know, the district will do 100% contribution until June 30, and employees be on notice that starting July 1, you're going to be doing your 60%, and then that gives some folks a chance to be prepared for. I'm not sure that people are prepared for this, and even though it's $1 something on a lot of the staff. You know, for some of our other staff, it's a little bit more. So that might be a middle ground, or to say we'll review it during the budget process. I don't know. I think when I think about the staff that would be able to have the conversation about it, I think the messaging now is harder than the messaging would be in that situation. And what I mean is, if I went to the staff and said, all right, look, this is going to impact our budget $10,000 or $15,000, they would all go and understand that our budget can't absorb that. But I think going to them and saying it's $3,000 for the rest of this year, it's just harder to message, I guess, from my perspective.
This year, it was budgeted for. We're going to meet with the state.
Could certainly message it that way.
I I'm still as very sensitive for spending other people's. I think the state has mandated.
That's the generation we have in 5 hours here, but still the last couple of years coming. Before we stabilize some of the benefits and salaries and brought up to the actual wages across the country and where we make some of those very well. We couldn't keep people in these positions. Now we have a set of staff, which is what we like now. And we're not open, we don't have staff here, and we're barely able to do what we're doing right now. We're not gonna lose people.
And we're looking at that. They're gonna really leave because the state has mandated they're gonna have $4.74 out of their paycheck for an additional tax. And isn't it the lifeguard staff that we get charged by?
Those are all positions.
All positions, yeah. Yeah, you can still like position.
So when we voted for and looking at the budget, I want to look at that very much. Jalissa, can you hear everything we're talking about? So this would get looked at again during the budget cycle, and when would, or during all those meetings, but when would the state decide if they're gonna increase it higher than 1%?
As of right now, it says November of every year.
We put in there for the contingency that we were gonna cover 100% only through the end of this budget cycle, and that it was gonna get discussed during the budget committee meetings. And the budget committee could also discuss what they want to do.
Well, what we would do is, when I bring the budget assumptions to the board in February and March is when I would give you the assumptions that are being built into the budget, and you would give some direction on what you wanted to see in the budget. 620.
That's where I'm at. I understand that some it's, $3, but for some of the other positions, that seems something different. And I am concerned about losing people.
If somebody's in need for even dollars, or something else.
But then if you look at the director level, that's $50.
$52 out of my paycheck at that level. I never understood.
I can tell you no other organization has this conversation.
Well, then part of that,
I think, well, when we're talking about that's a difference.
Well, and this is just the work session, so you guys can have this conversation at the business meeting too. It was just a chance.
Are you guys going through the state fund or are you doing like that? So
Oh, no, we're going through the state.
have you considered doing the other options? An insurance?
We looked at, it would be it's too expensive. It costs like 3 times more. to do it that way, to go through a third party. To do it. Mhm.
That's interesting. It's actually going to.
It might be because we're so small. I don't know.
I think partly because insurance companies will make the determination on whether or not they're eligible versus the state.
Could be.
So I think they're asking. Well, if you look at the state of Washington pattern, they've already increased theirs. Because the interest far exceeded the funding.
Well, it's definitely a benefit. All of it. Yeah.
I hope not, because we can't, we won't be able to stay open. I'm really worried about it. I'm really worried about it.
As we feel like it's almost encouraging.
Have you read the definition of family member? I'm worried about it.
She said she could hear you really well.
That's because the
I'm wondering if that's why I was looking at the settings.
Mhm.
Maybe we can play with that during the day or something.
Ben Park and Rec has double the permanent tax rate that the city of Bend has, so our 20 cents per thousand is pretty insignificant comparatively.
How much they do.
Don't worry, I'll be leaving.
Good.
Good. You always schedule your everything for Monday nights.
I think I was kind of in favor of all. Yeah. And then. Finding that. I guess. Well, we did the master plan yet?
Nope, we're waiting for you. Okay, so in your packet, you have the draft scope of work for the master plan project. I've been working with the University of Oregon on this and just wanted to briefly go over with you what this looks like. It's a facilities and services master plan with a 10-year horizon. It's a planning document that this district has never really had. And what it's going to do is essentially go through a very robust public input process and then provide the board with information from the communities we serve about what types of facilities and services they'd like to see the district offer in the next 10 years. So I'm going to kind of go to page 2. It talks about guiding questions. So some of the information that we're going to get out of this process is, how does the community want the district to evolve over the next 10 years? What programming should we be providing to meet the needs of the community? Facilities, how do existing facilities need to be upgraded? What new facilities might be needed? Funding, and I really stressed with them the importance of not only bond and capital funding, but sustainable operational funding, because I would hate for us to go down the path that the original folks did, which is, oh, we'll figure out how to operate funding later, which is why we're in the position we're in with our budget. So really taking a hard look at if we were to add on additional facility space, how are we going to operate that sustainably as we move to the future. And then partnership, how can we collaborate with other providers in the area? And so then they go on to talk about our district and give some context about who we serve. You can see when you look at our populations at risk that we serve compared with the county and then the state of Oregon at large, we have quite a few at-risk populations that we serve, which you guys are all aware of. And then it goes into the project approach. So basically what they're going to do is they're going to review any documents that the city or the county or the district have as it relates to our current operations and our kind of doing a needs assessment. There will be some stakeholder engagement, and we'll get to the specifics of that in a minute. And then they're going to take all of that and put it in a report that we can utilize as a framework for moving forward from this conversation. So the proposal is that we would kick off this project in March of 2023, so next March. They would do that review and update of our recreational needs. They would do some stakeholder engagement, and to cut down the cost of the project, I'm going to be the person on the ground leading some of those conversations so that they don't have to travel over here and us have to pay them. And then there will be community engagement. So we'll do an online survey that will be available both in paper and online. We'll do some workshops and listening sessions, some focus groups with key stakeholder populations. And for those, we talked about doing it in partnership with the Latino Community Association and potentially with Papalaxamisha. And then in June, July, which timing wise is kind of beautiful because that's when we'll be finalizing our budget for next year, we'll do a 2 to 3 hour visioning workshop with the board to kind of take in some of the information that had been collected and talk about exploring what we could do and what we should do moving forward. Then they'll get into funding strategies, which for me is where the meat kind of gets put on the bones, because we can have all these great ideas, but how do we make them reality? And then the final plan will be done sometime in October, November for the board to adopt. So that's the timeline. And then we'll do an evaluation period with them. All consultants like to afterward. How did it work? What worked well? What worked didn't? All that stuff. And then the project is $30,000. And you have in your pile of documents a letter requesting support from the Bean Foundation. So I gave that to you just so you have it, you know what I said, and gave them a copy of the draft scope. I didn't go to their meeting. George just told me to get it in by the end of December. So I sent it off to their staff member. What I told them in the letter was that we could probably figure out how to fund $10,000. And how we would do that is we would take $5,000 this year and $5,000 next year and split it in between 2 fiscal years, and then hope that they would be willing and interested to support us at about the $20,000. I also explained that doing that does conflict with the board goal of adding to our ending funding cash. And ultimately, this whole thing makes me reflect on, my opinion, the struggle of this district over the last 13 years is that there's no funding to do any of these kinds of important things. There's no funding for evaluation, for planning, for projects that are out. There's really not a lot of funding for the operation itself anyway. And then you add on being a public agency and needing to do these sorts of planning projects. It's just, we were not set up to be a mature adult public organization. So I kind of explained it to the Bean Foundation. They've been such a great partner over the years, helping us fund those types of projects so that we have a stronger foundation. So we'll see what the outcome is from that ask. If the Bean Foundation says, nope, sorry, we can't help you there, I have some other ideas for where we can look for some help. Ultimately, we could take $30,000, $15,000 out of this year's budget and $15,000 out of next, but it would impact our ending fund balance. So I'm hoping that we have some funding partners. But in my opinion, we have to do this so that if we do decide to go out for a bond renewal, well, a new bond when we pay off the current one, that we have some information as a basis for that decision rather than just hoping that what we think should happen is what everybody thinks.
I have a question that kind of relates to this, and that's, special districts, is there a limit as to how much carry forward or you have to cover your request like your LOL or something, so you can carry and have as much funds saved done?
Yes.
I tried to look online, I was reading this before us. Specifically address that or special.
Yeah, to my knowledge, there's no limit. And if there was, we probably wouldn't be anywhere near it. Unfortunately.
Actually, school districts in one factor, one factor, that is not left. They operate solely state funded for their personnel, yes. And then I have a few other districts that would levy less than because they didn't need. Very small. That's why I wondered if there was some sort of a limit, or percentage that a special district can carry over year after year before they say, no, wait.
Yeah. I would imagine that voters might look at it and say, but when I think about other budget committees I've sat on for school district or library or other places, I don't think there's a limit because I look at their ending fund balance. That must be really nice.
We're an organization with a huge amount of money that go out the door for anything that can go wrong in this facility. So it's like if you don't have a lot of money. Not everyone.
So what I would love for you to do is take a look at that master plan. If you have any feedback, the goal is to bring you a contract to consider approving in January or February with the University of Oregon. And we don't have to do a competitive bid process for this project because the University of Oregon has some special ORS designation that they're exempt from that process. Because it's a student learning experience. They have a couple of grad students that are going to work on it with the faculty. So
Did they do this preliminary for you at the church?
Mhm. Yeah.
I've read through it this week. That's good. But they put together, and I think it's a great plan going forward, thinking about that.
not about the dogs. It's just
Well, they got their stuff together.
they just have the program. Okay, we're not going to have that. On
Community input.
yes.
It's a good opportunity.
2023-24 budget development.
So I just wanted to share with you that I've been working on the mid-year budget evaluation, and I always stress out in November, December because the percentage, Craig's laughing because he sits in my office and watches me stress out. Because when we look at our personnel expenses, it's always a lot in the summer, and then it takes a few months for it to even out. And as I started looking out further, and you'll be able to see it in the tax anticipation loan Jason analysis that's in the business meeting, we're actually on track to end the fiscal year with more money than we expected in the adopted budget. So for me, that's the goal in my mind when we develop the budget, is to try and under assume on revenues and over assume on expenditures, and then at the end of the day end up with more money in our carry forward than was originally planned. So I'm excited to bring that to you at the next board meeting. And I just wanted to remind you, and at the end of your agenda, there's a page that kind of talks about all the different topics that we're going to discuss in upcoming board meetings. And most of them on here are budget related. So in January, we'll be doing the mid-year budget analysis, the 5-year capital and maintenance plan, And then you'll officially designate the budget officer and the budget committee. And then in February is my evaluation. You'll be discussing how you want to do my evaluation. And then you'll take a look at the current strategic plan, which in my mind probably will be updated after we do the master plan, so that they're consistent. And then we'll also do our first review of budget assumptions. So what I'll do is I'll bring a memo to you that says in the budget, we're going to assume CPI of hopefully not 7%, hopefully 3 or 4%, hopefully something much lower than what it has been. We'll bring in assumptions on most of our revenues, how much growth we see. We'll bring in some assumptions around any increases in fees or memberships or those types of things, and then get your reaction, because I don't want to build a budget and then have you guys look at it and say, you're way off. Like this, you should have assumed something different. So I will check in with you in February and in March on those assumptions. In March, we'll do my evaluation and then do that budget assumptions review. In April, I presume I will bring you a tax anticipation loan and also the pay wage scale for the upcoming year and any partner facility use agreements. So the 509J agreement and the MST agreement typically come back to you in April, May. And then May 4th is our budget committee orientation. So that's our first budget committee meeting. It's not required, but it's when you get the budget document. And then May 15th is the first budget committee meeting. And then we're to the end of the fiscal year. This time of year always goes really fast. And so that's just a picture for you of what's coming up with the budget process and upcoming board meetings. Are there any questions about anything?
The first budget committee thing is May 4th.
Yep.
That was-
Yep. And what we'll do is we'll take a deep dive into something. We always like to kind of take a little bit deeper look at something at that orientation meeting, but also talk about local budget law and all those things. But everybody is coming back, and then Alexa knows budget law. So we don't have to go back and do any 101 type stuff. We'll probably just try and take a deep dive into something, maybe program revenues or something interesting. So, and then capital improvements and other maintenance projects. In your executive director report, there's a whole description about what happened last week with the temperatures in the pool. Essentially, it got cold and the computer wasn't talking to Greg is cringing because he wrote me this really beautiful explanation, but this is my 50,000 foot level. The computer wasn't talking to the system, and part of it is no one has upkept the system and the computer. So the system may have changed, but the computer didn't change. And so they're not talking. So we have an investment that we need to make. We just found out it's about $3,000. So it's not, I was worried it was gonna be like $15,000. But we have to retrofit our computer Climatech system and get data in there so that they can all talk to each other. And this is, I would say, the continuation of our discussion about preventative maintenance and investing in the facility we have and making sure that it's operating at a high level. And Greg and I were talking that it's probably going to be a few years before we kind of catch up to all the things that really should have been happening over the last 13. So, but that's the update on capital improvements. Is there anything else you want to?
If they read it, if they had any questions.
We have the budget authority. Whether or not I want us to spend that money this budget year, we don't know yet. I told Greg we're going to wait till January and we get that mid-year.
We've been dealing with it for multiple years, so it's not gonna, I mean, we'll just solve problems as they come up. But I mean, yeah, I mean,
It'll be nice when it's fixed.
should hypothetically, but yeah, it's like I said, it's not a mechanical issue. It's a computer issue. It's the thermostat isn't working in your house. Well, you can override it, right? And now you turn on the heat. It's that type of issue. But with that, you know, the controls that we have, in my opinion, it's not being used for the purpose that it was intended. And if we have these systems, they should be working as, you know, as installed, as intended. And that should help pinpoint and troubleshoot problems when I talk to people on the phone, technicians, about what's going on, instead of throwing darts at a wall and go, well, it could be one of 30 things. So like in my statement, the stuff that we did in the pump room, everything is working as it was designed. There's still some other things, but we've had less problems, less headaches, and trying to figure out, and quicker turnaround time, because I can pinpoint what's going on, because we've eliminated a huge chunk of variables in all those systems. As we sit here, there are still multiple variables that it kind of have to go through. So it's in the long term, but you know,
It'd be nice to have it fixed.
it'd be very nice to be able to start doing some of these things. Yeah.
Small lessons.
And being able to know what questions to ask. Like right now, I had a boiler technician out. I had the technicians on the phone with Climate Tech, HVAC. We're trying to figure all this out. Have that system be up to where it should, and optimizing, should be able to pinpoint and then call the right person and get it fixed. So that's the time too is a lot of it, but yeah.
Right. I think that's it for work session, right?
Mhm.
All right. We adjourn at 6:51 and we can go on to business meetings.
I don't need hours, it's just getting fun.
I'll be in touch.
Okay, so we'll convene a business meeting for the MACRD Board of Directors on December 19th, 2022 at 6:02 p.m. And start with roll call. Chair Lewis, present. Vice Chair Foster Drago, Ms. Watkins, Secretary Treasurer Siebel, present. Board Member Sutton. Present. And we can stand for the pledge of allegiance. I know. We know it's there. She's just walking over the push. I know. I think we're good. Yeah. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Then our land acknowledgement. Every community owes its existence and vitality to generations from around the world who contributed their hopes, dreams, and energy to making the district like this moment. Some were brought here against their will. Some were drawn to leave their distant homes in hope of a better life. And some have lived on this land for more generations than can be counted. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. We begin this effort to acknowledge what has been buried by honoring the truth. In Central Oregon, we are standing on the ancestral lands of the Wasco, Warm Springs, and Paiute people. We pay respects to their elders, past and present. Okay. And this need a motion to adopt the agenda unless anyone has amendments. I move to adopt the agenda as presented. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the agenda is adopted as presented. And then do we have Brenda Bartlett on there?
We do, Brenda.
Next up is our 2021-22 audit.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, good. I can hear some better than others. It's probably whoever is closer to the microphone. Thanks for letting me come virtually tonight. We're getting lots of audits out right now, so I'm still kind of working. Yeah. So this, it looks like you up on the screen, you have the letter. I can start with that. Well, Courtney, do you also have the report?
Yes.
Or are you going to want me to share my screen?
Ooh, let's have you share your screen. I think.
Okay, and because I think I might start with the report, just, you know, because that's usually the main attraction, right? So if you don't mind me doing that. Okay, can you see my, what are you seeing? Are you seeing my letter or the auditor's report?
Yes, it's very
Perfect.
tiny, but we're seeing it.
Oh, it is? Okay, let me make it bigger. How's that?
Much better.
Okay. So this is our auditor's report. This is contained within the financial statements. The financial statements are management's responsibility, as we kind of talk about in this report. Even though we help prepare the financial statements, Courtney does go through them with a fine-tooth comb and just make sure that they match her records and that all the financial statement footnotes are complete. So all in all, management takes responsibilities for these, even though we assist somewhat in putting them together. So we start off with our opinion, and we're saying that here in that second paragraph, the financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the aquatic center. So that's what we're looking for. I think I might say this every year, but we're always wanting to get that unmodified opinion. So that's good. Always good news. When we talk about the basis for our opinion, we're basically saying that we go out and obtain audit evidence. So one of the examples I usually use for that is, you know, we will get information from management that says, here's what our bank account is. And we'll go to the bank and see if that matches up. So we try as much as we can to go out and find third-party evidence. So somebody else other than management telling us those numbers are right. So that's what we do. We gather that kind of evidence, and then we use that to get to that unmodified opinion. I mentioned that management's responsible for the financial statements. We're responsible for obtaining that evidence. We're also responsible for being independent, meaning we really work for the board. In general, we work a lot with management as we're going through this, but we work for the board. So we always keep that independence from management in our mind of who are we really reporting to, who are we really hired by. So that's one of the things that we continually keep in our minds as we're performing the audit. Within the package of the reporting document, you will see things that aren't the financial statement. So we give an audit opinion on the basic financial statements, but there's other things that the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, I'll call that the GASB from now on, but there's other things that the GASB says has to be in there. One of those things is management's discussion and analysis. And if you've been in one of my presentations before, I always say, please read that. It's a great little place to find out what happened in a nutshell for the year. And then at the very end, there's a little place of, hey, what are we thinking about coming up? What are our challenges that we're facing, or what are we expecting to happen in the future? So I always give a plug for that document. I think it's a nice read, something I always ask everybody to read. And then there's other things within there. There's budget schedules in there, of which you are probably all very familiar with already. There's certain things that we're just required to put in there that aren't things we give opinions on. So a lot of those budget statements, we'll read them. We'll make sure that they match to the budget document, to the resolutions that you came up with and any changes that might have happened during the year. But we're not giving an opinion, we're just reading it. If something jumped out at us that was inconsistent with something we knew, then we would let you know that. We did this year find out that you get a tax anticipation note every year. And I think you get it in June and pay it off in November when the property taxes come in. And it turns out because that's paid off in a lump sum, as opposed to in payments, it meets the requirement to actually be put as a liability on your fund statement. So if you spend any time with your statements, you'll know there's kind of more cash budgetary schedules, and there's also what we call full accrual statements. And those full accrual statements have all the debt of the district and all their capital assets, whereas those fund more budgetary basis do not. So usually debt is left off of those budgetary statements, but this one meets a little exception that I actually just became aware of. And so I chatted with Courtney. I said, hey, I just found this out. I'm going to propose an adjustment to get it back into line with what the GASB says to do. And so we did that, and we always call that out. We fixed it in the prior year so that it will be fixed ongoing. So for both years here, it's fixed in 21 and 22. And then this paragraph right here at the end, whenever a municipality in Oregon has an audit, they ask the auditor to also perform some procedures that are really non-financial in nature. And so that's really the next report I have. And unless I have some questions, I'm going to move right on to that next report. Okay, I don't hear anything.
Jean does have a question.
Oh, okay.
Under significant risks identified.
Under significant risks identified.
Oh, okay, and that's in the letter, right?
Yes, in the letter.
Okay, and I'm going to cover that in just a minute if that's okay.
Oh, she's not that good.
Yep, she said that's fine.
Okay, good. All right, great. So I'm going to go to this very last letter in this report, and this is the Oregon Minimum Standard Letter. And this is just an additional report on those additional requirements that we have to follow. And so some of the more important things that we're looking at is we're looking to make sure that you are following local budget law. So you'll see that in that bulleted list, that if you go out and buy something that's large enough to require competitive bidding, that you go through that process appropriately. And so those are mostly the things we look at. If you get any grant funding, sometimes you'll get some grant funding and maybe a little bit of restrictions placed on those. That's what programs funded from outside sources mean. One of the things we'll look at is we'll say, okay, if you received, I think maybe last year, the pandemic funding, when you receive that, there's little strings they put, we have to test those strings. So those are the kinds of things we look at. And what you see here at the bottom is our, sort of disclaimer opinion. We're saying in all the testing that we did on these things in the bulleted list, nothing came to our attention that led us to believe the district wasn't in compliance. So again, that's exactly the result we're looking for. Had we found instances of non-compliance, then we would have to list them in this report and they'd go to the Secretary of State. So what goes to the Secretary of State now is saying, hey, they're in compliance. We're looking good. So, so that's all I have for that. And now I can move on to that letter. And if you'd like to ask that question, we can talk about that real quick, and then I'll go through the rest of the letter. Or if you want to wait till I get to that point, fine, whichever.
She'll wait till you get to that point.
Okay, great. So this letter comes with every audit. This is something where the GASB are, in the auditing standards, they were thinking that maybe auditors were spending a little bit too much time with management, talking not enough time with the board. So they really wanted us to start, bringing more of the audit to you, telling you more about the things that we're thinking about when we're doing the audit. And this year, we have even more. So auditing standards changed in 2022. for us to give even more information to the board. And so you'll see the letter's a little bit longer. Every audit gets this letter. Was there a question or I?
No, that was me coughing, sorry.
Oh, okay. So we start off with our responsibility in the financial statement audit. And I've covered that a lot. I covered that in our report because we talk a little bit about that. But one of the things that we do is we look at what we call the internal controls of the district. And I think one of the things that you'll see if you get another letter, which you didn't, is we'll sometimes have to say, hey, we're looking at these controls and we're a little concerned. We think you've got some holes here that could lead to some errors, right? So this is good. We didn't issue that letter. So what we're saying is we looked at those controls while we were planning the audit, and we didn't find anything where we felt, ooh, there's some big holes here that we really think you should fix. So that's good. That's number one. That plan, scope, and timing at the beginning of the audit, we always send a letter to the board and we say, hey, this is when we're going to start. This is when we think we're going to wrap up. I think we were a little behind where we wanted to be this year. That was a lot with some illnesses of our staff this year. We just could not keep people healthy. But we did get it out before the deadline of December 31st. So at least we did that. But I think we were a little behind what we wanted to be that we communicated to you during planning. We did maintain our independence. And this is the part that the question came up. So as I mentioned, this is new this year. So it is not that all of a sudden MAC has a bunch of new significant risks. This is something that we've always done. So as part of our audit, we've always done what we call a risk assessment. And we say, okay, where's the highest risk for this particular entity? And that is where we're going to spend most of our time. And so for the MAC, it's really revenue. Revenue is a big risk that charges for service. And the reason is just because of the way it is. Charges for services, anything that's coming in small amounts that can also be cash. Those are always a little bit riskier for auditors, but also because it's in a point of sale system that's outside of QuickBooks. So anytime you have kind of two systems going on and you need to take that information and get it into the one system, that's going to be a higher risk for an auditor. And we're going to do some extra procedures. And we did that. So we would look at reports from the point of sale system and make sure all of that information got into QuickBooks. So that's always been that way. It's always been, if it's not an integrated system, that's always going to be more risk for auditors because it's happening over here. And the general ledger, the accounting records that we're trying to audit are over here. And we want to make sure that they're, coming together exactly right. So that's one thing. And then we also just identified capital assets because it's not something really the last couple of years that we've been doing the audit have been a big area of focus. So we're always looking at new things. So you guys did a lot of improvements and deferred maintenance and capital projects. And so that's an area we look at because it's not an area that we've really had to pay attention to before. So those are the two areas that we really focused a lot of our time on this year. And that's why they're called significant risks. So I have been going around talking to boards and just really reassuring everybody that this is a new standard, not a new thing. So, and I can pause here and get the question.
Covered the question.
Good,
But
okay.
if I could, I mean,
Yeah.
from my perspective, I couldn't agree with this more. I mean, that is where fraud can happen so easily.
Mhm.
And I would invite any board member who wants to see what that process looks like. We have 3 or 4 levels of internal control to make sure that that kind of fraud isn't happening. Not only for us as an organization, but for the individual employees so that they know that they are protected by the system that we have for those. So just for what it's worth, I would invite any board member to come and talk.
Yep. All right. As in terms of significant accounting policies, it's management's responsibility to make sure that they're using the accounting policies that the GASB has said are appropriate for reporting. And all of those accounting policies that are significant are laid out in note 1 to the financial statement. So as you get past those basic financial statements, you'll see the footnotes, and those are all laid out. It will tell you, you know, here's how we do this, here's how we do this. And so those are all there. In terms of estimates, not a lot of estimates in the max, and that's nice because it does decrease the risk for auditors and for, you know, for you to be able to manage all of this. The only estimate is really trying to determine how long an asset that you purchased is going to last. So you just kind of go, how long are we going to be able to use this before we have to replace it? And that's always an estimate, because you might think that it's going to take 10 years before you have to get a new slide, and it turns out maybe it wasn't made as well as you thought it was, so you end up replacing it in 5 years. The 10 years was just an estimate. So we always just let you know that anytime you've got these reports, some stuff is estimated and not like based on cash in the bank, right? Let's see. The disclosures. So we talk a little bit about the most sensitive disclosures. And for this year, that's really that change, that $200,000 change. So it's, you know, it's showing as a debt on the fund statements where it didn't used to be. So that's one of the disclosures that is showing, you know, why that happened, how it happened, what it looks like. And I think what's important to know about this is that it's all about timing. There really was no change. You get the loan, you pay off the loan, you get the loan, you pay off the loan, but it's all in the timing of when that happens. And so that was part of what was in that disclosure. No significant unusual transactions. We had no difficulties during the audit. We have this, oh, I'm talking about this again, the reclassification of the tax anticipation note. That was one of the journal entries that we proposed. And again, that had a lot to do with me just having an aha moment. I went to a training and I said, they were talking about something and they were saying, you know, this is an area that's misunderstood. And I said, oh, yeah, I misunderstood it too. So it was really interesting. And I thought, oh, this is the MAC, right? So, so we brought that and proposed to have that journal entry. Oh, shoot. I think I just hit something on my keyboard. And then let's see, there was one other, just a small, we found a couple invoices paid in July that actually were for services in June. And so when you're reporting in accordance with GAAP, you always have to pull those into June. So that was real small, but just hit enough that we had to propose it. No disagreements with management, no changes to our auditor's report. We do ask Courtney to sign some representations. And this is also new. Courtney, I don't think that I sent you a copy of that letter to be attached. Is that right?
That's correct. I haven't gotten it.
So I will send you a copy tomorrow. I'll write myself a note that you can just provide to the board. Okay. Again, this is just a change from our standards. They're saying, hey, if you're going to do, if you're going to have management represent certain things, you should also share that with the board. It's new, so I kind of just missed it this year. I think this is like the third time I've missed it. So I apologize for that, and I'll do that. We do talk a lot with management about this and that, but one of the things that we are, you know, supposed to share with you is that none of the things that we talked about resulted in a condition to us staying as the MAC's auditors. Again, we do report to the board, and it is the board who hires us. And then this, I kind of already talked to you about this, all that other stuff that's in the report that we didn't audit, we read it, make sure it's consistent with other things and the things that we learn. And then we would have to report to you, the board, if something was inconsistent and management didn't correct it. So that's it. That is it for the letters and the reports. Just a really good result. Everything went really smoothly, except for the illnesses, which I think everybody's been experiencing. But yeah, we're real pleased. Does anybody have any questions for me or comments or something you'd like me to follow up on? Okay. Well, great. Well, thanks
Thank
for
you,
inviting
Brenda.
me.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I'm going to take off, and Courtney, I will send you a copy of that letter.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Nice work.
Just like everything that's been-
Well, I think they're really like.
So prior to last year, there were always findings.
Like a lot.
So I feel like it's my claim to fame that we've had 2 years of clean audits. But I want to show you what this $200,000 thing, I'll show you what it means, how it hits our books when we get to the financial reports. Because it does, I think it's a good thing personally, but
We'll be touching on that.
Okay. So we're going on to receiving and accepting the November 8th, 2022 election. as
Yeah, you're right. You're in the right spot.
okay, so the county clerk sends over the abstract of the votes and asks me to sign off on them. But in every public agency I've worked at, the board or the elected officials sign off on them. So this is your opportunity to see, and I'm sorry it's sideways, what the results were of the election for renewing the 5-year local option levy. It passed, as you can see, with 3,074 votes in favor and 1,989 opposed, and 168 undervotes, which means folks skipped that particular item on the ballot. Yes, I made sure that we had the right abstract. Good job.
One that I'm supposed to sign.
Yes.
Send us the numbers. Yeah, we agree. We weren't there for the ballot.
What are these? These are precincts?
Yeah, this is by precinct.
Oh, that's perfect.
On their website, you can find
Say there's
like
a map.
there's a map that shows, because yeah, it's quite interesting. I'm excited
It's
to
very
pull that up
interesting.
tomorrow.
Do you need a motion?
Yeah.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second. All in favor? Aye. Okay, anyone opposed? Hearing none, the election results, abstract of the election result has been passed. Have correspondence.
Well, as always, we start with our Google reviews. And so we had 1 5-star Google review, and we had 1 2-star Google review, to which I did reply. We often have patrons who complain that our lifeguards are too mean, too vigilant, too intense. And what we always try and remind them is that their goal is to try and prevent accidents before they happen. And so every day that I get that complaint, it makes me happy because it means we're actually paying attention to safety with kids. So regardless of what the comments are on Google, I always try and respond to either own it if we did something wrong or explain why something was done the way it was. So that is our Google reviews. So I write it in Word and I let it sit and then I go back. So thank you for, yes, I'm the one that responds to the Google reviews. We received a letter from the Culver Bulldog Booster Club that we wanted to pass on to board members. So that is in your packet regarding their 7th annual banquet and auction fundraiser. And then I also wanted to share with you, every December, the county holds a meeting with all of the special districts and municipalities that have the potential to either put levies or bonds or elections on the ballot, with the goal of trying to make it so we can plan out to not compete with each other. And so this is from our discussion this year. I did, on behalf of the MAC, thank everybody for their support for passing the levy, and explain that we were starting a master planning process that may result in a discussion at the board level about a bond. And so you do see that next to Madras Aquatic Center, it says possible construction or maintenance bond, sometime between November 24 to May of 26. So it's just holding it there. That doesn't mean that the board has to do it. It doesn't, or anything like that. It's just for planning purposes to see where there could be conflict or multiple things on the ballot at that same time. So yeah, they go back and forth about whether they have some board members that don't want to go out for any taxpayer money. They just want to save money until they can build it. And they have other members who want to build a new building. So I think it's, yeah.
Because you have too many apps out there on one, and no one will get it. You know, that's where you just can start saying thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's kind of fun that everybody kind of gives an update on what's going on in their agency. And I mean, I would love to have meetings like that more often. I think it's good to hear from each other and what we're doing. Right. Outside of our district area. So that was all I had on that.
Right, we have no visitor reviews.
Nope, she's still there.
Okay, no other.
There. Now you can see everyone that's here. Yep.
So we're on the financial report.
Greg just said your favorite part of the meeting. So when the auditor, when she showed you the 2 bullet points of things that they found, the $200,000 change and the $2,015 that was put in the wrong fiscal year, those changes have been made in QuickBooks. So now it shows, now our balance sheet is consistent with the audit. And so I'm going to be able to show you what it means now that those things happen. So as of November 30th, our total general fund cash on hand was $486,634. And I wanted to point out that when you look at the comparison year over year, our tax anticipation loan had not come out yet as of November 30th, 2021. So that's why it looks like, wow, what happened to our local option levy revenue? We're only at 199. Well, it's because the 203,000 has already been taken out to pay off the tax anticipation loan. And then as we go down, when you look at accounts receivable, last year we were at $52,000, and that was a lot of the scoreboard project donations that I had invoiced out. So $7,000 is more typical of what our monthly accounts receivable looks like. You can see that our merchandise inventory is lower this year than last year, although Mandy has replenished and stuff has been going gangbusters. We just sold $700 worth of sweatshirts to someone who bought them for her whole family. Yes. So things like that are happening. And then that is really the only things that have changed between the 2 fiscal years. As you keep going down, accounts payable, they look really low for our November accounts payable. And part of that is I was sick. And so the timing of when it got entered into QuickBooks impacts that accounts payable. Let's see, credit cards, you can see that we're spending a little bit less, and that's because of the timing of that grant. We were still spending grant money in November last year. Gift certificates, we are starting to sell them. Mandy figured out how to do it in the system correctly. So now we're able to track who gift certificates are attached to. And we feel more confident using the ActiveNet system for gift certificates now. We had stopped using them for a while because I didn't feel that we had the right checks and balances in place to do it. And now we do. So you'll start to see some of those on there as liabilities. And then as people use those gift certificates, they come off the balance sheet and they hit the profit and loss statement for that month. And so this is something that is different than the past. I'm learning how to use the balance sheet as opposed to the profit and loss. And the best examples I can give you of that are grants. Instead of grants coming in and sitting on our profit and loss statement the month that we happen to get the money, they should be sitting on our balance sheet. And then as we use the funds, they get moved in as revenues on that month. Another example is this tax anticipation loan, and I'll show you that in a second, how it hits the profit and loss statement. So overall, when you look at the year-over-year comparison, it shows that we're down 10% from the prior year. But really, from my perspective, when I look at the numbers and kind of dive into it, we're about even with where we were last fiscal year when you take into account some of the changes between the years. Now, when we go to our profit and loss statement, this is our month end for November. So this shows you all the revenues we got in November and all the expenses we had in November. We basically hit our budget goals for November with property taxes. We were at 99% of budget. Concessions were at 155% of budget because, like I said, Mandy's been going gangbusters on how it's all been designed up there. So people are buying them. Daily admissions was up 205% over the prior year. I attribute that to having open swims on Saturdays only. I think that when you create demand, I think what we've done is instead of coming maybe Thursday or Friday or when, everybody just comes on Saturday, which from my perspective is great because then our staffing is being utilized.
Was there any?
Not in 20, I mean, we were restricted in the numbers that we were allowed in, but we didn't have any closures. We were open completely, but we were still limited on capacity. So we could only have 60 and now we're at 120. So that's part of it too, for sure. Let's see, what else did I highlight? Youth basketball. 275 kids. I mean, we're double what we were last year. So we can see that in the revenues. And so we basically hit our user and registration revenue. And I was pretty excited about that because last year, I think we set some high goals and I never felt like we actually hit them. And this year we're hitting them. And I still feel like we set some high goals. So kudos to the programming staff. And then overall, when you look at our income, we were at about 97.5% of what we budgeted to come in November. Then we look at expenses. And I want to highlight why it's so important to remember from a board perspective that we're looking at the category level, not necessarily at the line items. And this is one of the reasons. So we do have some staff who in the past have been considered program staff, but they're now at the front desk. So now they're admin staff. So you can see that they were originally budgeted to be in regular salaries programming and we're down in that area, but we're over in admin. And that's because of where we had budgeted those particular staff to be. You can also see that we are over on our employee benefits under administration because we do have one staff member who is now 30 hours a week And so they're eligible for that health insurance benefit. And so at the end of the day, our personnel services came in at 88% of budget. So we're still within budget. It just, because those staff members are no longer in one area, they're in a different one. One area is up and one area is down. Does that make sense? So we were 88% of budget for personnel. When you look at materials and services, again, we don't really have a good baseline year because last year was COVID, and we have staff who now have been here more than a year and are figuring out better ways to do things. So one example of this is advertising for programs. You know, we originally budgeted $220 because we had 2 things we were doing, but we did quite a few other things in November that have worked really well. And so we're at 312% of budget for program advertising. Yes. We spent nothing for programming equipment in November. Yep. We'll get there in a second, but this is just in November. What else? Concessions. We spent $210 on concessions, which was more than we expected. Now we expected to spend $165. Really, at the end of the day, we're talking about $50. But I like to point out anything over 100, you know, 100%. It's soda. We didn't have snacks or drinks, and so that changed in October. And we used to have a pot machine, and we got nothing from it. There was no lease, there was no percentage, there was nothing. So Mandy called him and said, "We'd love you to get your machine out of here, and then we'll make our own money on it." Another one that I'm keeping my eye on is our legal services budget. So in November, we're going to be over in legal services by a lot this year. And I was reflecting on it. And part of it is, historically, our executive directors have not used legal services. I feel like I have a sixth sense of when I need to call an attorney for advice on things. And I don't feel comfortable moving forward without having that advice sometimes. So what it tells me is I need to budget more in legal than what has historically been budgeted in that budget. When new laws come up, when we have employee issues, like one example is we had an employee that we had reasonable suspicion of use of drugs, of legal drugs. I need to call an attorney in that situation. And so we've cowboyed things a little bit historically, and that's not my approach to legal issues. So I'm just warning the board now that we're going to see, I'm guessing we're going to spend about $15,000 to $20,000 in legal this year. And I see that as a good thing because I feel like it gives us more confidence that the decisions we're making are good decisions. We can also call SDAO, which has free legal, but his answer to me lately has been, you need to call Jeremy.
That's like always.
So depending on the issue. So with that particular issue, I called HR Answers, which is a consultant of SDAO. And we talked through it and we looked at our policy and they said, well, you just need to follow your policy. And I said, well, our policy isn't great. And so they said, well, call Spencer, who's the SDAO risk attorney. Well, I called him and he said, well, I think, I don't know. And then we got on a 3-way conference call and I listened to Spencer and Jeremy disagree for about an hour about the approach. So I think
That also.
yes, it's entertaining. And I put my 2 cents in where I could, but I think ultimately, if something happens, SDAO represents us up to a certain amount or on certain issues. And in other issues, Jeremy and his team would represent us. So I think that's why Spencer always tries to get us to go to Jeremy. At the end of the day, I'm just using legal more than prior directors, I think, did. And
Different. Preventatively and not
react.
To situation.
Yes. So I was saying that I I see it as a necessary evil when you're a public agency and you want to protect your assets and your future and all those things. And so I just would prefer to spend the money proactively than have a lawsuit at the end. So we can talk about that more when the budget comes. I just wanted to let you know that I'm watching that and we're saving money elsewhere to hopefully compensate for that expense. So when you look at materials and services as a category, we only spent 55% of budget for materials and services at the category level, which is what I mean by we're saving money elsewhere to compensate in other areas. Debt services. Now, historically here, you would have seen under principal payments, $200,000 for that tax anticipation loan. That no longer hits the profit and loss statement. That hits our balance sheet now. The only thing we need to budget for on that particular loan is the interest, which gets paid out of our funds. And so you see the interest payment for $3,000, you don't see the principal payment. That's one operational shift with that. That's the interest on the tax anticipation loan. So for total expenses, we were at 75% of budget. And so ultimately, our net ordinary income was higher than what we expected, which is what we want to see. And then other income and expenses, remember the 2- is our debt services fund and the 3- is our maintenance reserve fund. And we had nothing happen in maintenance reserve in this month and no payments or anything came, oh, I'm sorry, interest payments came out for debt service fund, 42,350. Now, the profit and loss from July to November, that's what this report shows you, a comparison of July to November this year versus last year. And this is where you can really see this audit change. So the beginning fund balance for July to November 21 has $200,000 extra dollars in it because of that tax anticipation loan. Moving forward, that money will not be in the beginning fund balance. It'll be sitting on the balance sheet as an asset. So as an asset and a liability. So really it nets out at zero. It doesn't really exist. So when we look at our beginning fund balance, it looks like, oh my gosh, we had 119, but that's really what we had. And I love this because I feel like we always had this asterisk, like, yes, we have 319,000, but it's not really 319, it's really 119. So I feel like this better reflects our financial position without that $200,000 in there. But the thing I was really excited about on this is when you take out that beginning fund balance, we are up 6.29% on revenues over last year. And I'm hoping as we get to December, January, February, that number grows for what we're up over the prior year. When you look at personnel service, material services, we are up over the prior year for this period. For personnel services, it's because we staffed more this summer than we did in the prior year. Remember when we only had 60, we could have 3 lifeguards. When you have 120, you have to have 5. So we do have more staffing on deck in the summer and on no school days and on Saturdays when we have open swims. We also added program aides who assist as deck attendants, helping at the slide, keeping an eye on running, all those kinds of things, really kind of investing in that preventative safety. And then we did have the cost of living adjustment of 7.1%. So all of that kind of goes into that 18% increase year over year. For materials and services, the year over year difference you can see when you look at materials and services and capital outlay. We had the same amount of grant funds both years, but last year it was capital and this year it was materials and supplies. So that's why that difference there. And then debt services, you can see it's $90,000 less. Well, that's the change from the audit, pulling that $200,000 out. So overall, when you look at this report and it includes the beginning fund balance with that $200,000 less and the payment of $200,000 less, it shows we're down about 23% on net ordinary income for that period of July to November. Last one, okay. The cash flow analysis. So remember, this is something that we put together with estimates for July through November. And then as we get through each month, we update it with actuals. And for me, I'm focusing on this bottom line down here,
No,
right down there, the 139,039.
right there.
So with all of the things we know that we think are going to happen between now and June, I'm thinking we're going to end the fiscal year with $139,000, which would be a $20,000 increase over the current year if it all plays out. So for me, that's a good sign. Now things could change. Something, a filter could go, anything could happen. But from this moment, I know, I shouldn't put it out there. But in this moment, those are the kind of numbers that I want to see. I have moments where I think, are we doing the right thing, making the investments that we've made, going in the direction that we've gone? I hope I'm giving good advice to the district. I mean, honestly, I have these moments. And then I see this and I'm like, no, I think we're doing the right things. It's just going to take us some time. So for what it's worth, this made me feel confident that we're doing the right things, and we just have to keep going and see what happens. Any questions on the financials?
As a curiosity,
We do, but it's hard. Well, and it's also challenging because the accounting, it was very different. And so I've looked at reports and tried to extrapolate to compare apples to apples. It's challenging. When I look at, because honestly, when I look at the prior year budgets, when I look at our budget document, I don't even know if some of those things are real, honestly. So for me, the baseline is last year with the asterisks that we weren't at full capacity, and the year before with the asterisks that we were closed half the year. So some of this is we're just figuring it out as we go, which is not great.
Yeah.
What do you think qualitatively? I mean, we've changed so many things. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
You had mentioned earlier your own pre-COVID.
Yeah.
I would say now we're more consistently busy. People through the door, I don't know. But like to Courtney's point, having those certain times where people know now if you want to go to the Mac and Swim, Saturdays is your day. Instead of sprinkling throughout the week. Now and which has a direct correlation to how much staff, how much personnel we're employing to, handle that. So I feel like this is a reflection of that. Do I feel like we're serving? I feel like we're serving about the same people, same amount of people. It just looks different. Does that make sense? And then on the budget, I feel like it's better use of money, taxpayer money, I would say. Movies are only out for a certain amount of time. You got to go while they're in the theaters. If they were there for 6 months, would you have as many tickets sold, or was it just spread out over 6 months versus 3 weeks? So it's, but honestly, that was a long time ago before COVID. I mean, to be honest, but that would be my answer, having been here and seeing it. But I do believe that bell curve is going back up because we're out of COVID. People are feeling more comfortable. For some people, it took a little bit longer. So, yeah.
From what I was seeing on the clinic side and hospital side.
Yeah.
So I think at some point this is going to continue to grow as we do expand that. Like we
We used to be open on Sundays.
Mhm.
And I'm sure everybody remembers, like, I come on Sundays all the time.
Yeah.
You got people,
Right.
30 people. And you're here on Saturday, it's packed, especially the early swim, 1:30 to 3:30. Like the afternoon one wasn't as full, but it's still really full, but Sundays before were pretty slow. And that was like our lowest revenue day, all of it, in the following. But we still. I think it would be interesting, like, what, when people look at- there's certain people like I'm so excited about that.
They are putting together a pilot.
And I think there's other people that could really spread the word on that. I also think that like they are associated with like with everything, like better lifeguarding, you have for consistency. People like know that and want to be at or jumping on.
I can say usually, September till, January, it's really slow around here. And I feel like now it's more consistently busy. Like we're not having so much of a lull. Like people are coming in. And so like to Janelle's point, like it's exciting to look at this because when we're in our busy season after spring break and summer, is it really gonna explode? Where this, November, it's really good because people are coming in sooner. 'Cause, I mean, October, November, and December have always been really low on the revenue. So it's
Yes.
right.
But I
Yeah.
think it's the same as basketball, where people like want the rebound effect with it.
The trajectory is good. And then also, I mean, God, we're in our maybe I think 6th season of basketball, I think. So, it takes time in this community, and when you build a product and you're constantly trying to make it better, you get to a point where people are like, they know what they have their expectations, they know what they're gonna get, they're happy with the product, and then word gets out, and it takes a few years with all of our programs just for people to get faith. And I feel like the systems and everything. And so as the systems have historically been there, it's going to continue to increase. And I feel like we're getting that with the pool too, coming back out of COVID with the lifeguards and the staffing and the customer service and all those investments. I think it's drawing people back in, so
Are there questions on the financials? Madam Treasurer, anything to add?
Okay, does anyone want to? Of the. I move to approve the consent agenda. All in favor?
Yeah, she's not on anymore. She kept getting disconnected.
So, hearing none opposed, consent agenda is approved. And we can consider appointment to the vacant position number 9 on the MACRD Budget Committee. We have one candidate. The Casper. Aye, second. All in favor? Aye. Aye. No one opposed again. I will, let Alexa know that she was approved for that vacant subject committee position and, and then our hot topic is considering the approach to deduction. The Oregon.
this time and revisit it during budgets or even yearly in November when the state. Do I need to clarify my motion?
No, I don't think.
Courtney has to prove.
I think your verbiage was good. I understood what you were saying. So you were saying to approve the 60%, 40% that it was recommended by the MACRD Board. Yeah, the state mandate.
And revisit it annually during the budget process.
Didn't you mention that it's gonna be not addressed until that third year, which again is after? This?
Yeah, I got salty with the state when they said that, but because I said, great, another thing that's not aligned with the fiscal year budgets that most government agencies use. But yes, it's November when they will release the new contribution level. It'll be required January 1.
Really hear an agreement.
So Madam Chair, when a motion is made and there's no second, then you say there's no second to the motion. Can I entertain another motion?
Oh, okay. Okay, I did not hear a second to that motion, so does anyone want to entertain another motion?
I move that we fully fund the contribution required of staff to be reviewed at the budget committee meetings upcoming.
Did you want to add anything about the I mean, I can't sort of with the budget committee, then the budget committee.
As part of the budget development process,
Part of the budget development process.
I would like to have that decided before we, so it's in the budget.
I just think we're a big part of the budget process also. And we'll all be involved.
It's gonna hurt us every year in November.
I know.
Contribution through June 30. Make it very clear, June 30, 2023.
I will second that. Okay, all in favor? Aye. And anyone opposed? Aye. So we have 2 in favor and 1 opposed. And that motion passes to revisit the state of Oregon in during the budget.
Budget development process.
Budget problem. Okay. So. Let's move on to the executive director report.
So one of the things we've been working on as a team is creating professional development pathways for all of our staff to try and increase retention and also honor our staff who are still in that age range where they're dreaming about their futures and trying to help align what their interests are with what they do here at work. And so I wanted to share with you an example of one of the pathways that we've developed for aquatic staff. And it's been really fun to see them grow into each of the positions. So many of our staff come on as 14-year-olds as deck attendants, program aid 1s. And basically they are keeping kids from doing weird things on the slide and from running. We have started getting them certified in first aid So our goal is that every staff member, no matter their position, is either first aid CPR AED certified or lifeguard certified, so that everyone's prepared to respond if we have an emergency. A lot of those program aid ones then say, well, I want to teach swim lessons, and then they can become a program aid too, and they can do both of those things. And we train them how to teach swim lessons. We have a couple staff who then also said, well, I'd like to learn the front desk. And so then we created the program aid 3, where you can be doing all these different roles. The good thing about it is having cross-trained people in a small organization is critical. And it allows them to grow also into different roles. Now, a lot of those 14-year-olds, some of them we hired just purely as swim instructors, some of them also do deck attending, but a lot of them, when they turn 15, take the lifeguard class. So the lifeguard class that we just had in November, 4 of the 5 staff, well, let me rephrase that. 3 of the 5 staff who completed were program aides or swim instructors. 1 is a new hire and 1 was Shauna, so that we would have another adult in the building, which is great. And so then they become either lifeguard 1s, where they just lifeguard, or lifeguard 2s, where they lifeguard and swim instruct. And there's a pay differential between those positions. So, you know, if we have a lifeguard 1 that says, hey, you know, I really want to teach swim lessons, they get a little bump for doing that. So it's that little bit of incentive. Then as they get a little bit older, a little more mature, maybe they go to college, they come back to work for us in the winter break and the summer break, they can become a head lifeguard 1, which means they're deck supervising. Now, when we don't have a head lifeguard, Peyton or whoever the manager on duty is the deck supervisor. So in the mornings, I deck supervise. I prefer deck supervising in the morning because it's calm. Deck supervising during an open swim is not for me. Peyton is so great at it. So we all have our pluses and minuses. And so we do have a couple head lifeguard 1s. And then we have 1 lifeguard 2 right now. And we're going to probably, actually, no, we did add a second one who can do deck supervising and teach in programming. So we have 1 who's teaching fitness classes, both aquatics and land-based. And we have 1 who's going to be working on sports camps for the summer, because her goal in college is to become a PE teacher, athletic director. What a perfect fit, right? And so we're hoping that if we hook her in now, when she graduates, maybe she'll come work for us instead of working for the schools, although she'd be great at the schools too. But anyway, so really exciting to see how we can grow our own talent. And if people really have an interest, I don't think people understand recreation as an option, as like the best career ever, because it's so fun. But also, you know, I think about all the public sector jobs. Nobody ever really knows that those are options. So we love that we're getting to kind of grow our own. So that's our positive for tonight. Operationally, I want to let you know that we've been testing out a new software for scheduling and time management. Right now we use ADP for payroll processing and for time management. We moved to that about 1.5 years ago because the system was not working well prior to that for the administration, for the finance officer, because it was taking data and it was just very challenging. It created a really hard process for processing payroll. So we moved to ADP and it has not worked well for anyone except for the person doing payroll. So we kind of switched a system that worked okay for everybody, but not for payroll, to something that works great for me because it takes me 20 seconds to run payroll. And it's awful for all the staff. They can't see their schedules. Nobody can put in their time that they're available. It's just not a good system. So when Shauna and I were at NRPA conference, she visited a bunch of different tables and got a bunch of different cards and started researching and found a really great product that she's been testing. I think she tested it with 10 or 11 staff. They all love it. It's all cell phone based. It's very intuitive. And I think it's going to be a lot easier for managers to work with as well. I'm not sure how payroll is going to interact, but I'm willing to take a hit for the team. If it works for 39 other people, then I'll figure out how to make it work for payroll. It's also going to save us a little bit of money. When I looked at it, it looks like it's going to be about $250 a month that we're going to save, which is great. So it's a win-win all around. We talked about the facility update. Feel free to read it.
Sorry, back on that. I just with bosses with the
Yeah, it's got
Yeah.
tracking as soon as
So
you,
it knows if they're.
yes. Or it knows if they're at the field where they're supposed, you can put in the GPS coordinates and it knows if they're where they're supposed to be. Yeah, I asked the same question. Let's see. Okay, programming enrollment updates. Just wanted to show you, no school day camps. We haven't seen a lot of movement. The next well, yeah, so the next one is in February. There's 2 days in a row. So we're gonna promote that. Group swim lessons have been going great. We had 3 private swim lessons. It was Lynn, Janelle, and me. But that's good. That's still money that's coming in from good. We're working on a training program. Peyton's identified a couple of staff who she feels can give really high quality private lessons. Right now it's hard because she's the only one that does them and she can't wear 4 hats at once. It's been a bit of a challenge. So we're working on building the bench for private swim lessons. She's been working with a couple of families on homeschool swim lessons, kind of taking how we do our group lessons and changing it and doing it during the day. We had it open for 24 hours and we already had 16 people signed up for it. So it's meeting a need. We are charging consistent with what we charge for school district swim lessons. So it's a little bit less expensive than regular group lessons. But we wanted there to be equity between whether you choose to be in school or choose to be homeschooled, it should be the same price. So that's going great. Club volleyball ended up with 24. We have 3 teams. We did hire a 3rd coach so that we've got 3 volleyball coaches, which is awesome. And then youth basketball has been causing Shauna sleepless nights. 275 kids, enough coaches. Season starts in January and goes for 6 weeks. And we're gonna have staff all over the gyms across the 509J school district. So kudos and thank you to the 509J school district staff because they got us extra space at Metolius that we hadn't originally had as part of the plan. And they've been really flexible with us trying to figure that out. And I think that's it. Any questions? Oh, wait, I had one other thing. I put our winter, so staff developed a winter break schedule that's a little bit different from our no school days. And I wanted to show you how we're being flexible and trying new things. So we know that the 1 to 3 open swim is the popular one. And the 3:30 to 5:30 has not really been. So we thought, let's test doing a splashdown just in the leisure pool and having lap swim from 3:30 to 5:30 and see if people use it for that purpose. So that's what we're gonna do. And then because of our official work schedule being Tuesday to Saturday, and with the holidays landing on Sundays, they're being observed on Saturdays. So I will tell you all our staff are really excited to have a couple Saturdays off in a row and have a couple 3-day weekends. So I think it worked out well this year. You know, as the day changes, then it changes what day we're closed. But yeah, that completes my report. It's online. It's on the scoreboard. We put it on Facebook. I haven't put it in the paper. They charge a lot to put stuff in the paper. I think they may have even. I can ask Tony if he'd be willing to do that.
Well, we probably.
I'll reach out.
Board member highlight.
We have been continuing on with OLAPs in the morning. So we skipped a few days last week, which sounds like it was perfect timing for the extra full block. I had noticed that there are more people.
I don't know if it's just my imagination, but there was one day where almost every lane had to double up. I know. So it's been great to see.
lots of people active, lots of people, attending, so.
Wednesday, December 7th, I zoomed in on that grading Parks and Rec meeting for the aquatic section. And it was very interesting to listen to some of those other executive directors from across the state. You're experiencing.
Yeah.
Malala Aquatic District. I wrote down her name is Melissa. I hope I
Yep,
got that
that's right.
She talked about, everyone was asking her, how come she's so successful with staff?
Mhm.
She's fully staffed, life is wonderful. But
Melissa.
she talked about having done over the years, I don't know how long she's been there, what you were saying with starting the kids out here, moving them up to here, and making them feel like they're advancing. So I think you got that idea through their affiliation down. Yeah, but that's kind of sounds like that's what.
Good. I like that. That's good news.
No, it's just interesting.
For taking lessons at a private school. All being held and then running, starting, messaging how I started. To like, learn how to put all the people. And a lot of people, we recruited from the sports. And now actually, someone that I lifeguarded with, two people I lifeguarded with from the pool, they split it, half of us out, still open. Both from the pool program now.
That's cool.
And I can't drink.
Heard several districts see that they're doing what they call the splash. A lot had canceled January swim lessons. We told they don't feel like.
It's true, but I don't understand. Like, we're 85 degrees all year round. Now, this is a place to be when it's 12 degrees outside. When it's 100 degrees outside, people want to come. Yeah.
Shannon and Ben's, waitlist, they got too many people. And,
Yeah.
you know,
Which sometimes benefits us, maybe not so much in the winter, but in the summer, we get quite a few folks from Redmond and from Prineville.
Well, one of my highlights is on the topic of growing your own. It's our 13-year-old was here for my daughter's birthday party. Which we had a mermaid birthday party with her own. Super fun. I saw her. Yeah, she's so cute off the album. It was, yeah. But everyone had fun. But our 13-year-old was like, yeah, I'm definitely gonna work here. When can I work here? I was like, well, I think you have to be 14. She was, well, as soon as I turn 14. I'm applying now. She was like, I could walk down the hill to work. It was like, she has it all planned out. And when I woke up, I'll do lessons and learning how to work. So, but she's watched other friends work. It is like, constantly watch work.
Mhm.
Those are my experiences just waiting for that. Oh, and the other thing they do. She doesn't want to in general, but it's okay. Nothing against the school. Alrighty, I think we can adjourn at 8:08. What was our next meeting?
January 16th.
Oh, the holiday.
Mhm.
Look at it, I brought you all a little there because I like you.
Oh, I failed too.
Thank you.